All right, you can probably kick it off whenever, Sarah.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. I am just here to do the introduction for Nickey Skarstad, and I'm also personally really excited to get to be part of this workshop as a participant today. So Nickey is currently a director of product at Duolingo, one of my personal favorite products, actually. She has over 12 years of experience building products for brands that I'm sure you all have heard of, like Etsy, Airbnb, Shopify, basically probably the entire home screen of all of our phones. And she's also a mom, an angel investor, a writer, and I have yet to ask her details of this, but an aspiring TikTok star. So I know we're going to enjoy this workshop.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Nickey Skarstad, and this is actually my second year presenting at Women in Product, which is pretty fun. I was just telling Sarah that last year I did a recorded workshop. So this is fun because it's live and I get to actually interact with you all live. And I actually haven't tested this workshop out with a bigger format. Looks like there's about a little over 100 people joining. So this is going to be a bit of an experiment and should be fun. We can all kind of go through this together. But the high level today is just kind of want to walk you through and teach you about building really good and meaningful product strategy. Like Sarah said, I've been working in product roles. Actually have never heard it framed that way, like on the home screen of your app, which I'm going to steal that, Sarah. That's good. But I've been working in product roles now for 12 years, which is awesome. And I'm like the person in the room with experience these days, which is kind of terrifying, actually, I'm not going to lie. But today I'm a director of product at Duolingo. And in the past, I worked at Etsy. I was an early employee there. I joined when they were sort of less than 100 people, helped them kind of go through the product market fit exercise, which was cool. Then I went to Airbnb, where I worked on Airbnb experiences, which when I joined had just launched. So it was, again, kind of a larger, more existential product market fit exercise. And that was a very actually challenging product to build because of the complexity of bringing to life a digital experience as well as a physical IRL experience. Maybe I'll come back next year and give a talk on just that because it was really hard to build, actually. And then I went to Shopify before Duolingo. And I also have lots of other fun passions. I'm a mom. That's where I spend the majority of my time outside of work. And write a newsletter, which I'm going to tell you more about at the end. And then also I'm recently like super hooked on TikTok. I had a video go viral recently, which was totally wild. And give me a follow on TikTok because that's where I've been spending my time these days. But anyways, all right, so let's dig in because we only have 45 minutes today. So again, high level, why are we talking about product strategy? So many of you are product builders. You are building interesting products and you have to bring products to life every day in your jobs. And one of the things I think many product folks that I have worked with, at least, have never truly been taught how to build meaningful product strategy. We kind of get to the we're either handed down a vision and a mission from like a high level company perspective, or we are just kind of told the metrics that we need to move. And we don't go through this sort of the journey, I'll call it, of really getting into like, why are we doing this? What are we trying to do? Why are we doing it? And then how do we actually go down the funnel and measure it? So I want to start more high level before we get into and do a workshop on how do we actually build and think about input-output trees, or KPI trees, as I like to call it. So that's a high level. Also, if you have any questions, I'm watching the chat in here too, and we'll do some interactive stuff in a second, but feel free to kind of, I'll save some time for questions at the end too, but you're also welcome to shout things out. This is meant to be a little bit more interactive because it's a workshop. So cool. All right, so let's do this. One very simple strategy framework that I've used, and I keep coming back to, honestly, because it's just really like silly simple, is the strategy pyramid. And so what this is, I think this is often taught in like business school. It is a simple way to think about really building a meaningful strategy that starts pretty high level. And as you go down the pyramid, it gets more detailed. So the top of the pyramid is the vision that you're creating for, either your product or your company, depending on what you're building. And again, it goes as you sort of move down and you scroll down the pyramid, you're going to get more high fidelity. So the vision is what you're bringing to life. The mission is why you're actually bringing it to life, right? That tends to be your sort of like reason for being, the why behind what. Your strategy is how. So that is actually like how you're going to actually execute on your vision and your mission. And then your objectives are like really, honestly, it's like the pieces of your strategy and how you're measuring your progress. So let's look at and contextualize this through an example because I think it's helpful. I was actually going to use Duolingo for an example for this, and we can come back to Duolingo if we want to do that later. But I actually think Etsy is interesting because it's a double-sided marketplace, and it's a really complex product that they're building, which makes their vision, mission, strategy, and objectives a little bit more toothier than some different products. So I actually scraped a lot of this stuff directly from their website. So this is out there, it's public, but this is their Etsy's vision, mission, strategy, and objectives at a high level. So what's their vision? They want to keep commerce human. They're trying to put people in the process. They want to make sure that you're just not buying from like a digital storefront that has no humans that are powering it. And their mission or their why is that they think in a time of increasing automation, it's their mission to keep human connection at the heart of commerce. So that is the sort of reason for being for Etsy. And their strategy is they're going to do that by building a platform that empowers sellers. We'll come back to that word in a minute, and helps them do what they love, and then helps buyers find what they're looking for and what they love so they can purchase from those sellers. So pretty straightforward, but actually anyone that knows, if you've tried to work on a marketplace, it's actually really complicated because you are actually, let's see, slides are a bit hard to read here. I can zoom in a little bit. I can actually get real close here. I'm guessing that's a little bit easier. Let me know if that's not true. Also, you can go into Mirror yourselves. Let me give you all the link. Hold on. Boop. If anyone has trouble getting into that Miro board, let me know, but you should be able to zoom in and actually go into this board. Give me a thumbs up if you're in there and it's okay. I just want to make sure that the permissions are all right. We tested this earlier. Okay, good. Cool. Also, let me know if you can't see again, just I want to make sure I am looking at the slides, not at you all yet. So anyways, so when you're trying to build a marketplace platform, it's actually quite challenging product to build because you're both balancing sort of both sides of this larger seesaw. And how are they, basically, what are their objectives or what are they measuring? And I grabbed these from some of my time when I was there. This wasn't out there, but they are growing GMV, which is gross merchandise value or gross merchandise sales. They're doing this by increasing the overall number of sellers and seller GMV, so how much money each seller is making. On the buyer side, they're looking probably at overall number of buyers, average order value to make sure people, when they check out, they're checking out with like a very full cart, which is good for the seller. And then most likely are thinking about or looking at conversion as well. So that's high level there. And why, again, is this important? As we get into building a KPI tree for this, it matters because we effectively, what you're going to do is you're going to track your KPIs and your inputs and outputs back to your objectives. So before we get into that and we practice this together, let's talk about what KPIs are and outputs and inputs. So we all have the same context and frame of reference. So high level KPIs, what are KPIs? This is probably something you as a product person are talking about and using in your day-to-day often. So key performance indicators, really, that's what that means. It is like these specific metrics or pieces of data or information that you are using to understand if you're actually making your objectives happen. And so at Duolingo, for example, where I work today, we use KPIs daily to make sure that we are on track and we're actually shipping product that is actually helping our larger vision, our strategies, et cetera. Someone asks if KPIs are useless without KRs. So the way that I've thought about this before in the past is people work with different measurement frameworks. So there's OKRs, which are objectives and key results, or KPIs, which are key performance indicators. Honestly, I found that like KRs and KPIs can be the same thing. Depends on your org and what you're trying to build. But typically they can kind of like ladder up again into your objectives, ideally. Are KPIs always numbers, or are they sometimes qualitative? They can absolutely be qualitative, especially if you're building 0 to 1 or more early stage products. Sometimes you're going to benchmark yourselves on like super qualitative, just use your feedback when you don't have data yet. And I think that can be fine too. You just got to make sure that you are really clear on what success looks like, what type of feedback you're listening for, to make sure that you're on the right track. Yeah. Jennifer says that, she's used OKRs and KPIs pretty much interchangeably. And I think that honestly, for the most part, is true. I'm sure different, again, it goes back to like your org and what frameworks you're working in. Duolingo, we use OKRs and we love them. And at Airbnb, we used inputs and outputs. So honestly, just think it's different by the company. Cool. So what are outputs? So when I think about building a KPI tree, and we're going to build one together in a second, outputs typically are at the top of your pyramid or at the top of sort of like your larger KPI tree. So these are high level KPIs, and usually good ones will track up really neatly into your objectives. And so again, we're going to contextualize this with an example in a second. And then inputs are a level lower, right? So these are the sort of like true drivers of your outputs, which will ladder up into your objectives or your KPIs, again, depending on your frameworks that you're using. And I actually find that good product strategy goes deep on what the inputs of your business are and how you're going to drive them. So don't be shy. I think hopefully one of the takeaways from today is that you will have a new framework of building a KPI tree to use. And honestly, like the lower level inputs or some of those KPIs at the bottom of a KPI tree are the places where you're actually going to be able to move your business or make the biggest business impact. And a lot of people don't think about it that way or in that framework. So I'm catching up on the chat here. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So let's do this together. So you'll remember up in the Etsy example, we had, hold on, I'm just going to zoom up again. So if you look at the objectives for Etsy, right, they have sort of these three buckets. High level, they're trying to grow GMS or DMV. They're increasing the overall number of sellers and and how much money each seller makes. And they're improving or increasing the number of buyers, order conversion, etc. So if we put this onto a tree, and I'm going to need y'all's help here because we're going to build this together. How this looks or how this works is, so you start to go down. So if one of your objectives is GMV at the top of your pyramid, you know that there's probably many different levers, and we're going to keep this relatively simple for our own brain so they don't explode. But there's a lot of levers that will drive your ability to make more money. Just to keep this simple here too, let's change this to, we're just going to use dollar signs because I think a lot of people don't know. This is just you making money. A lot of people don't necessarily use the GMV or GMS vernacular. And so what are two ways, if you go back to your objectives, that you can actually make some money is you increase the number of overall sellers, right? You're bringing more sellers onto your platform, which is also increasing sellers making money. And you're improving some buyer conversion or the number of overall active buyers that you have, right? There's probably a lot more KPIs or outputs on this second level of the tree. But again, we're going to keep it very simple just because it's just easy for us to describe. Cool. All right. So let's work on this together for a second so we can build this out. So you can imagine you step one step down the tree. So if we're trying to drive the overall number of active sellers on Etsy's marketplace, how would we do that? And what is a sub layer, something that would drive this? And you're welcome to put some ideas here in the chat. And I built this out beforehand too. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. Yeah, so here's a good one. So that you can imagine that this is the number of visits to the seller landing page. So this is like the pure holistic number of people that are hitting that page. So overall number of new sellers. So that's up here. So basically, if you go down the tree, you're trying to ask yourself, how would I make this number bigger, right? So it's the number of overall active sellers. If you have number of visits to the seller landing page, someone says repeat sellers, that's a good one. Keeping more sellers active, improve seller retention. That's another good one too, which is just like making sure that you are, hard to type and talk at the same time. Did not think about that. So improve seller retention is just like keeping the sellers that you have on the platform happy and engaged, right? Maybe give me one more and I'll add a tier here. Any other ones? Let's see. Added seller products. That's a good one, right? So this could be like new seller services that they create. Products. So for an example, something Etsy does is they have seller advertising. So maybe it's like a new product like that, etc. Let's see what else. New seller products. Cool. So you can imagine that if you were the product person that was in charge of improving the number of overall active sellers of Etsy, you would be thinking about many of these different inputs, right? So if this is your output, your inputs are the tier down, and you can continue to go down the tree. So if we talk about, all right, if we're going to drive the number of overall visits to the seller landing page, because we know that will increase conversion and overall it'll improve the overall number of sellers on the platform, how could you do that? What's a way to increase the overall visits to the seller landing page? So somebody said ad campaign. So that's like, you could say that's like marketing or ad campaigns, right? Another thing that I was thinking about earlier as I was working through this example was SEO, right? So like making sure that landing page, when somebody searches, I want to sell on Etsy, making sure that you are competitive, you're actually performing there. Influencers, that's an interesting one. I didn't think about that. So like having people talking about like how awesome it is to be a seller on Etsy, right? I'll add that over here. And so I'm not making these metrics right now, but you could imagine a world where we're driving inputs. You would want to measure some of these things. So you could say, all right, we're going to improve, we're going to hit X number of impressions on our ad campaign. So this could be like 1 million new ad campaign impressions. I'm not going to get too in the weeds here just because we only have, let's see, what time is it? We only have like 20 more minutes, but referrals is another good one. We're going to make this tree a little crazy here. Cool. So there's probably many more. Honestly, you could think of many different ways to do this. If you were the PM working on this, your job, which is hard, is you're going to look at all of these inputs that drive this output that will grow your overall active number of sellers. And you have to figure out what are the levers that we actually think will make the biggest lift. I'm not going to talk too much about like the best way to actually like plot your overall work that you could pick up. But there's a lot of really awesome frameworks out there, just things like cost versus impact. There's a lot of actually really good Miro templates. This is going to become a Miro plug today that you can use that have like charts, and you can kind of start to understand like what potential impact could some of these things have, and is it worth your time as a product team or as an organization. Cool. So I love Miro too, Clarissa. It is like, honestly, I was very impressed with, I hadn't used it in a while, and you can use it like slides now, which is really cool. All right, so let's just go over on the buyer side really quick, just so we can continue to fill this out. So if your output here or your objective was you were going to improve a buyer conversion or the number of overall active buyers, what are some ways that you would do that? Referrals, right? That's another one for sellers. So you can imagine, I'll write this like a better input, which is increase overall buyer referrals. And if you were going to make this really metric focused, you could actually put a number and make this measurable. So say you wanted to say like by 8%, that's actually kind of high. That would be hard to do, but any other examples? What else could you do to increase buyer conversion or the overall number of active buyers? Yeah, retargeting or even advertising, right? So there's marketing, advertising, campaigns you could be running. Honestly, some of these are going to be very similar as on the seller side. If you're looking at, I didn't put conversion here as one of your outputs, but there's ways to think about, just making each person that hits your platform either spend more or convert higher, which is probably where a lot of Etsy's team is actually spending their time these days. Personalization and promotion, yeah, those are all good. Recommendations, personalizations, let's do that because that's a good one. Let's see if I can spell on personalization. All right. It's hard to do this while people are watching, I'm not going to lie. All right. So that's another good one because you can imagine a world where, if I know that you're searching for a gold necklace, we can show you the type of content that you want to see. So less clicks for you, and you're probably going to convert in a much higher way or a much higher number. So let's say we wanted to go down and increase referrals. What are some ways that we could increase referrals of buyers? So we could probably get more people to, discount codes is interesting. So like campaigns drive discount codes. This is not super metric-y, so this is maybe a bad example, but I could definitely see something along those lines. Also, if you want to get more people referring generally, just making sure that your conversion on your referral page, whatever it looks like, is high. So increasing your conversion. Cool. All right, I'm not going to belabor these or spend too many of these because I want to do one more example. But you can start to understand how, as you walk down this tree, you're getting much more specific about all of the different ways that you could drive whatever your KPI or your objective is. So if you can imagine you were the PM that was tasked with increasing buyer conversion, how would you would have to really think methodically about, all right, there's probably 172 things you could actually work on to do this, but getting really clear on like what are all of the drivers of that specific metric, walking down the tree, and then doing some impact analysis of like, all right, of each of these things, do we think there's ones that are either maybe easy for us to do, so it's low-hanging fruit, or that we think they would have an extremely high impact, and so we want to invest here. Cool. So that was your first example. So there's your tree. And we're going to do this again, but we're going to pick an example. And we're going to really put Nickey on the spot today. You're going to make me sweat, y'all.
Hey, Nickey, one clarification before we move on. I saw some people in the chat just asking the colors, if you can just reorient. So is it?
So when you look at the colors here, I would say the level of the tree doesn't necessarily matter less, because depending on what you're building, honestly, you could have to walk several layers down the tree before you get really into inputs. But the way I think about this is you should keep your objective or one of your key results like in one of the top couple rows, right? So if you are the PM whose objective is we need to increase the number of overall active sellers, that is your output. As you start to walk down this tree and you get lower on the tree, those are your inputs, and those are the drivers that you're more likely able to move, that will move the metrics up the tree. Let me know if those in the chat if that makes sense, but I think the color matters less, more is like the inputs are usually lower on the tree than higher, if that makes sense. Yeah, and each of these, like if you think about it, this isn't technically an output, right? This purple one here, and there'll be many inputs to it, and you could say that this is an output of these inputs. So it gets a little muddy. It's a little confusing, but yes, Sophie exactly is right. Cool. And I think as you were thinking about this, or if you're going to do this on your own, one way to think about this is just trying to walk down your tree as far as you can, because you're going to start to get really clear on what are all of the drivers to the business metric that I'm trying to move, or my objective, or your key results, right? And so again, the way that we call these matters less. It's more of the exercise of going through and making sure it's really clear for people on your team, especially like what you think the drivers of your business are. So when you actually need to move them and you're on the hook to, increase the number of overall active sellers, you're going to be able to do that because you have such a clear picture of what your business looks like. Does that make sense, y'all? Cool. Love to hear it. Also, yeah. Okay. Mira board. Y'all are helping each other. Love this. Loving it. Love to see it. Okay. Hold on. I'm going to zoom. I'm going to go up. I'm going to take you on a little journey here. Okay. So I want to do another example because I actually think this is where it starts to be helpful, is to practice this a couple times. I might even give you some homework because you all have there is a worksheet that you can use where I copied over this stuff in here too, which I'm going to post in the chat right now. Boop. And you're welcome to copy this worksheet and use it yourself too. And the Miro can also be copied. So please use these resources. Okay, so let's do this again, and let's pick an example of a company together. So maybe you are working at a company right now and you are thinking about doing this yourself, or there's some interesting, like Airbnb, for example, had a really big, huge launch today. Maybe you saw that announcement. But if you all want to throw some examples or some ideas on a company or a product that we can do this on together, feel free to put them in the chat, and I can see if you have time. Yeah, I think we can whip together a poll really quickly. Miro's a good one, actually. I was thinking about Miro. Indeed is a good one. I would say pick products that we all kind of know so we don't have to over-explain. Masterclass is a good one. Spotify, Slack, LinkedIn, Instagram, Photoshop. That's an interesting one. All right, I'm going to put some of these in a poll quick, y'all. And we're going to make this fun. You can vote on it. All right. Miro. All right. We got 6 options here. So hold on. I'm going to publish it. Boop. All right. So you can vote. Let me know if you don't see the voting. What happens? Another good one. We're here. Pamela, if you go click on it in the chat, above the chat, it says polls. I don't think I can actually link to it or share it. Yeah. So you have to go up to polls. All right. Oops, Slack is in the lead. Miro, 10%. I thought we loved Miro. We agreed. Actually, no, Slack is a good one. It's a really good example of like an actual complex product to build. Okay. All right, I'm giving you guys 30 more seconds. So we only have like 10 minutes. I'm calling it. All right, we're going to do Slack. Okay, so really high level as we think about Slack. Let me update this here. What do we think Slack's mission is, y'all? What is Slack's vision, actually? What are they trying to bring to life? I'm going to spitball with y'all. Hold on, I want to make sure I can see the, make sure I can see y'all in the chat. Boop. Streamlined communication, making collaboration easy, connecting people at work. Ooh, I like that one. I'm going to say improving workplace collaboration too. Collaboration. Words are hard today, y'all. Make work life more productive. All right, probably some flavor of these, so we're not going to make a pithy vision statement. Why do we think they're doing this? Why do they care about making your work life more productive? You can see having teams work from anywhere, being distributed, right? What is going on here? What else? Enabling hybrid work feels, I think, honestly, probably higher efficiency, right? Because if you think about it, right, the company is more likely to pay for Slack if they can say, wow, look at our bottom line, or look at how much more efficient we are. And ooh, democratize information. I like that one. That's a good one too, right? Just helping people find information, making it so it's not, you know, a lot of times messages go into a black hole. All right, how do we think they're doing this, y'all? How are they bringing this to life? What do we think their strategy is at a high level? This is where it gets harder, right? Because we're trying to reverse engineer their strategy. I'm trying to think what they're, honestly, it's probably like launching new platform features that increase productivity. They just launched Huddles, which was an interesting one. I don't know if anyone has tried Huddles. We used it on my team a few times, and it actually is really great. Allowing different types of connections and collaboration. That's a good one. I'm going to steal that. What else? Increasing, yeah, probably like uptime is a good one, like increasing speed and uptime. I think what else? Maybe even like increasing speed of communication. I could see that being like a really nice pithy metric that they use. I'm sorry, it's driving me crazy. All right, we're going to stop there. Just productivity. Ugh. Productivity. Words are hard. All right, what do we think the objectives are? How are they measuring at a high level? How, if they're successful and if they're actually executing on their strategy? Number of users, right? I'm going to say number of paying users, and that could track up to some sort of like gross, probably just like revenue. What else? Daily active users is probably another good one. Love the DAO. How many people are using it every day? I would say number of, let's see, somebody said this in here. I think I just saw it. I lost it in the chat. Honestly, probably number of messages is probably like a very blunt metric for them. So like number of messages being sent. We're going to keep it simple here for now because this will help us with our tree. But as we think about, so again, here's the high level vision, right? Now let's go into this tree. So high level, Slack is a business, right? They need to make money. Otherwise, what will happen? They will go out of business, which is not good. And so we're just going to say like revenue or subscription. It's probably a company subscription model. So we'll keep these two things. These are the top line. This is the main high level company output is how much money they're making and how many subscribers they have. So what are some of the ways where they're making money or they're increasing their subscribership? What would some of those inputs look like? And again, this is coming down the tree one. Revenue, honestly, like capitalism reigns supreme these days, fortunately and unfortunately in certain cases. So a lot of times like high level is money, right? But sometimes, yeah, Natalie says my product is a loss leader. Sometimes companies will invest in products that either will have a really, really, really long runway to make money, or they're good for the brand, or they're helping society, or whatever. There are a lot of nonprofits out there, so it's not always revenue, but usually, business has to pay people sometimes, so it helps to make money. But okay, so as we go down the tree, what do we think is impacting revenue and subscriptions? So I'm guessing one here. So conversion is probably a big one, right? So it's like, oops, my colors are all weird here. Hold on. So it's like subscription conversion is probably a big one. I also imagine it's like new. So they probably have like churn and getting people to, so retention, getting people to stay and not churn. Let's grab another one here. I also imagine that subscription, retention, and I just had this in my head. Conversion. Somebody said conversion. All right, let's walk down the tree. So subscription conversion, what do we think is helping increase subscribership? Whoa, Miro, what's going on there? So I imagine that this one is probably, I could see this one being very like feature nuance where it's like, it's like payment methods, making sure people can pay however why my text is really weird on these, y'all, sorry. Lots of ways to pay. I could also see it being like corporate billing improvements, making a huge difference. Let me zoom in here. It's kind of hard to see. What else? Free trials. That's a great one. I could actually see that being a top line metric, but we'll put it under here now just to make it simple. So getting more and more people using free trials. Quality content. Let's see. Yeah, what it's like good, honestly, like a healthy sales organization. And it's like referrals could be one too. Sales, maybe sales training or sales efficacy. So of their salespeople, like making sure people are really doing their job well. And then you can imagine again, if you walk down the tree. So if we're like, let's pick a more fun example then. Let's look at free trials because I feel like that's meaty. For free trials, how are you going to get more people to sign up? You could do referrals is a good one. Landing page or marketing, another one. I'll come back later and put the lines on here too, y'all, so you can like come back and see this. But marketing or ad campaigns. Again, if you are the business leader for one of these, say some of you are charged with subscription conversion, you're going to again want to really figure out, okay, what are the drivers of subscription conversion, and then how do we actually make sure that we have a lot of inputs and our strategy is full of a lot of different ways that is actually going to help basically help you drive those metrics. And again, you can kind of go, obviously like most product leaders or product builders aren't necessarily owning an entire huge multi-tier tree unless you're like a director of product or even a VP of product. But when you are, especially when you're newer in your career, sometimes you're literally in charge with one KR and one metric to move. I actually miss those days because it's really can be really laser focused with your team and get really clear on what you think. You're specific. You're like, all right, we are going to increase referrals by, and writing this in a really good active way where it's like increase referrals by 32% or something along those lines. Cool. All right. So like I said before, I'll come back and build these out a little bit more and put some lines on here so these look a little bit better so you can come back and refer to them in the future. But you just walked through and created 2 KPI trees. Again, I'm going to link y'all to this worksheet because this is another good place where you can copy this and do this on your own. Also, the nice thing is about Figma or FigJam or Miro, a lot of these KPI trees that used to be a pain to build are really easy now. So you can kind of do this on your own. You can make it a fun activity and brainstorm with your team. And again, it just really helps teams really contextualize, all right, if I own this thing, if I have this objective, how do I actually make sure that I can deliver on it? And what are the actual drivers of the inputs to that objective so I can actually make a change or an improvement. Cool. All right. So we have like a little over 5 minutes. So I'm going to pause us here, y'all, and we are going to switch over and do some questions because I want to hear. There's a lot of chatter in here too. Why don't we just put questions in the chat instead of using the Q&A? Actually, hold on. Are there some questions in here? There are. Actually, I lied. Maybe if you have a question, you can put it into the question Q&A tab and ask it, and I'll reply to them there. All right, so Alice asked a question. Alice says, do you have any recommendations or best practices when it comes to defining targets and benchmarking for KPIs? So that's a great one. I think, yes, I would say, well, one, finding ways to see if you can get any proxy from other companies that are doing the same thing. I know it's not always easy, but especially with publicly traded companies, you'd be surprised at how much data or information about other companies is out there. I like to benchmark that way, right? There's like, if you look at conversion on landing pages, there's sort of industry bests that you can look to that help you set your own in the right way. The other thing that I would add there is, you know your business best. So what is your conversion rate, or what is your metric that you're trying to move? What is it today? And then in the past, if you've ran experiments or have experimented with changing it, how much lift did you create, and can you sort of benchmark that way as well? Hold on, can I? No, I can't respond in line, unfortunately. All right, how would you approach this with a brand new product? Ooh, that's a good question. So I've worked on a lot of 0 to 1, which I think is hard because you don't necessarily know what the drivers of your business are yet if you're building it while you're doing it. And that's a great case where sometimes you don't necessarily have hard data, right? You don't necessarily have really specific information that you can use, but you do probably have a lot of qualitative data, and you have your vision and your mission and some of your higher level, your reasons for being figured out. And so in those cases, I would really think about qualitative metrics that you think are showing that you're on the right track. So for example, when we were building Airbnb early days, one of the things that we decided it was really important to us to get right was not necessarily the number of bookings that were going through the platform, but the number of quality bookings that were going through the platform. So we created a quality metric that we thought was really critical to the backbone of the whole future of Airbnb experiences. And we used that front and center as we were building. And that, I think, was actually really helpful, and it helped them really build an amazing product. Fun question. All right. Oh my God, y'all, there's so many questions in here. I'm not gonna be able to answer them all. You're stressing me out. All right. When you talk about moving down the tree as far as you can, do you eventually move into a level that is a set of hypotheses? Yes. Yeah, I think so, actually. And I think that's okay. I think you should know the things that could potentially move your business and drive your business, but also not necessarily be 100% sure that you moving that is going to have an impact, and that's okay. As you think about what you're investing in, think about it as an investment portfolio, if you will, where you should make sure that you have a lot of things that you're sure are going to make a difference, and then throw in some things that either you want to learn and you need those learnings maybe to help you make better decisions in the future, or you have just a really nagging hypothesis that you think that's going to be big. And that's okay. I think a lot of people are very stressed when they don't know if something is going to make a huge impact. And I think good product builders and good product portfolios have both of those things, both the things you're sure of, as well as some of the big risks or your big bets. because those things could pay off in a more exponential way.
Hey, Nickey, it seems like there's a lot of questions, both from the previous chat and around Q&A, around just how to do this in reality with your team, within your company, how frequently, who to involve, at what team level, how it differs from the company strategy versus the product strategy, all of that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it, again, kind of depends on your stage and how you work. If you have a product that has been in the market for a long time, that has been out there for a while, I honestly think in those cases, you probably have a good sense of like what your tree looks like, and it's probably pretty well established. And so looking at it every 6 months, maybe, you probably wouldn't need to rebuild it every 3 months when you're setting your OKRs. If you are newer, however, and you are learning a lot and you're sort of like, you have your boots on the ground, but you are pivoting a lot and maybe you're trying to find product market fit, in those cases, I actually think that you can do this exercise often and you can kind of keep tweaking it as you learn more. So that could be quarterly if you're working on like quarterly OKRs, or honestly, if you have some sort of sprint ecosystem, doing it at the end of each sprint, or like, does this still make sense? Does this work? And you can involve your whole team every time you do it. I actually think it's great for like the full product team to be aware of what the drivers of the business are, because it helps people understand when they're making decisions on a day-to-day, what could potentially be impactful and helpful. So I don't think there's a right answer for that. I think it depends on your team and your company and your stage. But ideally, you've done it at least once, so everyone on the team has a real clear understanding of what your larger scaffolding and your input-output tree looks like, and you can kind of update it as is relevant over time. It's a good question. All right, let's go back to questions. I can run over a little bit too. So this session, I think, officially ends at 3:45, but I'll hang around and answer as many of these as I can. Okay, let's see. Let's find a good juicy one. Yeah, somebody also asking like what roles would be important to bring into this exercise. That's another example of honestly like bringing your core team, so engineering, design, and product together to know this as a unit is helpful. Also, in my personal experience, anytime you like pull out a Miro and you make it a fun brainstorm activity, it's fun. It's not like stale and boring. And so in those cases, you can have your whole team come if it's relevant. Sarah, I saw that you unvideoed yourself.
I was just gonna say, I believe we can let people up on the stage as well if anyone wants to join us and ask a question, live.
Join us on stage. Love to see some faces.
I have a question.
Yes.
In the opposite way. So what's an example of a KPI tree gone wrong, or a way that you shouldn't use a KPI tree, or, don'ts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would be careful if you're like really early stage and you don't necessarily know yet what you're building, to go too far down a KPI tree. Because I think a lot of this is like, it's very practical and sensical, and it makes sense when you think about it. But if you don't know enough about the drivers of your business, if it's like new in market and you're not really sure like what is happening in your ecosystem, be careful to not over-index on it, because you're going to kind of learn where you're going, and you might shoot some good ideas in the foot before they actually like are given a chance. Yeah. Hey there. Yeah. Go for it.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, Nickey. Thanks so much for walking through this. I do have a question in terms of, have you ever, are there any tools, or what have you seen, tried and tested that works when you have hundreds of product teams distributed globally, and each team might be at different level of maturity of getting to this, but making this information transparent to everyone across the org? I think I'd love to get some insights if you've had success with that.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think one of the most important things you can do in that case is be very clear on, hold on, I'm trying to find this, like making sure everyone understands this, which is like your reason as a larger organization for being and what you're trying to do. And the reason that's helpful is it helps just contextualize the like what and the why really nicely for people, so they can make the right decisions when they're actually like operating and in the weeds with their team. In terms of KPI trees, I think typically good objectives and good OKR process will really call out, all right, this quarter, we as a larger product organization have 4 objectives, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's what they are. And that could be in a deck or on Confluence if you use Confluence, or some shared strategy document that people refer to regularly. And in terms of like, I wouldn't necessarily say like use a Miro and have people go, and like look at it there. And so that could be just more you pushing that information at them at relevant times. So it could be a presentation that happens quarterly or in your OKR process. And I definitely find that it's more helpful for like the people on the ground that are actually building the product than high level. And like this vision, mission, strategy, objective structure is better for high level information sharing, if that makes sense. Cool. All right. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, I also wanted to say thank you. It's a great workshop. I have done a different workshop on KPI trees before, and this added addition, like it filled it out a little bit. It is so hard to wrap my head around all of the details, especially when you jump into, there's so many questions.
Totally.
And I think one question that came up for me a lot today was kind of going through the tree, like the difference between metric and feature. Like, do you actually use the KPI tree to explore the problem space? Or is that a separate step? And then maybe second, if you have any resources you can share to learn more about KPI trees, I'd love to know those.
Yeah, I can share some of those later. I also put a link if you're in the Miro too, sign up for my newsletter. I'm going to type this up and send this out as a post too, so you can have this like in your inbox forever. And that is a great question though. I think honestly, like the KPI trees are meant to be KPIs, right? It's like this input drives this output, and they're very practical. I think you could use it as a discovery exercise if that was really interesting to you or your team. But typically the way I've seen them used most effectively is that they typically are very metric driven, and they're written either as a goal, so like increase X conversion by X%, or they're written as a metric where it's like percentage of, trying to think of a good one, but like percentage of people opening the app each day, or people tapping notifications each day or whatever. And so I think honestly it's a tool, and you can kind of figure out what works for your org, but I've seen them be very metrics focused and not necessarily like a discovery exercise, but honestly, like it could work as a really good discovery exercise too. Good question.
Nickey, we do have 2 other people who have asked to join, but I'm not sure about timing.
I mean, I'm happy to stay for a while, so feel free to let them up.
All right. Emily and V, I'll let you both up.
Thanks so much.
Hi, friends. How you doing?
Hey there. Just followed you on TikTok. While I was waiting for approval. Thanks so much. This was awesome. I was curious about your thoughts on, building on the last question, the relationship between KPI trees, those inputs driving outputs as problems to solve, and discussing those. Like, would this be a tool? Is this a tool you've used before to align stakeholders with the problems you're choosing to solve, and therefore the problems you're not choosing to solve? I'm just curious about anything on that topic.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I actually have used this in a moment where I was going to say arguing, which was the wrong word, but where I was disagreeing with another team who thought I should work on a specific thing. And the reason that it ended up being really helpful is it was just a tool for me to be like, all right, here's the sort of larger ecosystem that is powering this thing that we all care about. And here are all of the different things that are basically driving this specific metric. And it was on a team where we didn't have a ton of data to say, like, we think if we do this one thing, it'll increase this metric by X%. It was very like finger in the wind. But when we laid it out, like this sort of like clear, these are the drivers that we care about, and here's how we've prioritized working on them, it like clicked for them in a way that it hadn't before. And I think that could have been on me where I wasn't necessarily communicating it well, or I couldn't really get the story straight. But then they saw it like spelled out that way, and it was like a light bulb moment for them. And so I think it could be honestly a good tool. I think be careful using it if they don't have the right context. It could be confusing too, right? Where it's like, there's this giant like scary tree with like all of these metrics on it. Like, what does that even mean? But I do think, I also liked that question before about discovery. I think in the right cases, it can be a discovery mechanism too, if it's used correctly. So you'll have to figure out kind of what works for your organization, et cetera. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a good point about, is the KPI tree digestible to the person you have in mind, or is it overwhelming and too much new information?
Yeah.
I think that this also reminds me of, if you don't know the relationship between an input, how much it's driving an output, figuring out like, how could we test that? How could we get more data or evidence suggesting that this will move among all these inputs, the output the most, like you said, in a world without a lot of data for like a nascent product. Thanks so much. I'll pass it on to V, I guess.
Cool. Thank you.
I don't want to take too much time. This was great.
Have a good one. Thanks for the question.
Thanks.
Hi, V.
Hi, Nickey. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for letting me in and asking my question. I was just wondering, because all of this is based on your vision and your mission, and I'm at a startup, if we kind of take a stab at the vision and mission, is it bad to later on change your vision and mission?
Definitely not. I mean, I think that's super common in startup land. It's interesting. So when I'm working on a 0 to 1 problem at Duolingo right now. And I think we've changed our vision and mission a few times because we're building it while we're learning. And so that is very normal. I also think, again, as you think about KPI tree, being really thoughtful about making sure that thing is not written, or it's not like etched on a tablet, and that like it is fudgeable and you can change it as you learn more, and making sure that you're thinking about it and framing it that way, because you will learn a lot as you get more in the weeds and you have some more time building the product. But I think that's totally okay to have a sort of squishy, high-level vision, mission, and strategy. And even big companies change strategy often. Maybe not too often, hopefully. But they're learning too at a higher level, organizational level, and are changing things as well. And if you don't change, that is, I think, can be very terrible for organizations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's just that fine balance of knowing enough to lead your team and have them have the confidence that you know what you're doing.
Yeah. I also think like you don't have to spend like months on strategy when you're in the startup mode. I think you can like make your best guess and write it down so people know what it is, but just keep in mind and tell people like, this is definitely going to change as we learn more. And then just be thoughtful about making sure you're actually going back to it and like poking holes in it when you've learned that it might not be true anymore. I think a lot of times, especially when we think about strategies, we think they have to be these very formal documents that do not change, that do not evolve, when really, in fact, like the whole nature of product development, especially if we're experimenting, is that we are learning a lot often, and that is like pushing us in new directions. And so just really framing that in the right way with your team, and even writing, I like to write the word either work in progress or draft on documents, because I think it takes the pressure off people really wanting to be like, no, this is wrong. It's like, no, we're working on this together. It's not final yet. Did that answer your question, V?
Yes, thank you so much. And this has been such a wonderful workshop. So
awesome. Thanks for coming. Hi there.
Hey, Nickey. Thank you. Thanks for the great workshop.
Yeah, of course.
Quick question.
Sure.
So while we are doing this exercise, I recognize that like lower in the tree, some of the KPIs might actually be overlapping with other PMs, and they might be like optimizing for those as well.
Yeah.
Within the team, how do you suggest going about that?
Yes, that is a good question, and that definitely happens. Even sometimes, like, honestly, I think if you are you using OKRs in your? I'm just curious.
Not really, just.
Okay. I've seen it too at different companies where sometimes like different teams have like shared an OKR, and that tends to lead to like, collisions. And so getting really clear on just making sure that like, just acknowledging that you're sharing this thing and you both care about it in cases where it makes sense, like trying to see if like one team can be the owner of that thing, because working on the same metric, if you're not highly coordinated, could be disastrous, honestly, or not disastrous, maybe a little dramatic. We're building products here. We're not necessarily saving lives. But I think just making sure that you're like talking to that team and that you're very clear on, okay, we're working on this and here is what we're doing to move it. What are you doing to move it, et cetera. just so you're not stepping on each other's toes. And then you can collaborate, and ideally what you learn helps them, what they learn helps you, etc.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Have a good day. All right. Any other folks?
There is one more, I think. Oh,
hi there.
Oh. Hi, Nickey, Sarah. Thank you so much. So I have so I'm working in a startup, but we're building enterprise product. So for startup, I really want a quick understanding whether my direction is right or not. But for enterprise product, our customer actually don't upgrade to new version until like a year later.
Yes, I know.
So it's really slow down the progress. I can get the feedback. And also a lot of time we deploy to an on-prem environment. So I even having trouble to collect those data. In this situation, do you have any suggestion?
Yeah, that's hard. I worked at Shopify in 2021. And one of the challenges I had there was that, it's just such a mature, huge product that the development cycles were really long, and it took a while. You were making product decisions like in January that wouldn't see the light of day until the next year in January. And so I found that it's just a harder way of working, and you have to kind of shift the way that you work a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And I would say my tips for you in that specific environment are to still get as much user feedback as you can, right? That is the one thing you can do, which is getting qualitative user feedback as much as possible. So can you put the new things you're working on in front of your users and get feedback? Mm-hmm. And just make sure that you still have feedback loops, even if you're not like shipping things to production. And then from like a KPI tree standpoint, it's just going to take you a lot longer to learn how to like drive some of those inputs on a KPI tree if it's not shipping in a year or year and a half. So you have to get creative about like, can you use some more qualitative data to make sure that you're getting at least some learnings on the path to that eventual launch. But I think sometimes enterprise is one of the harder things to build. Another thing that I've always found helpful, or that Shopify really preaches, is just second order thinking. Second order thinking, second order systems thinking, where you're really getting good at being like, all right, if I make this change today, this is going to impact my ability to make this change tomorrow. And really thinking, especially as you're thinking about your vision and your mission, your strategy, thinking 3 years out in ways that you would never need to do if you're building a simple non-enterprise product. And so it's almost like, I would, for you too, if you're looking at resources or looking for more resources, just look at like platform PM, and find there's a lot of good writing out there about just like how to think in second order ways and how to have really good first principles and things like that. So you can kind of get past the fact that you can't ship something tomorrow and learn that you're going to have to wait a year to be able to ship it.
I see. Great. Thank you so much. Sorry, one more question related to that. Because it's enterprise, so like the direct sale actually drives most of the revenue. Then from product team perspective, the revenue number is not really something I can directly control with. Then does it still make sense to make it the revenue as the North Star, or actually
honestly, probably not. I would say think about like whatever portion of that product that you own, if you own the whole thing, whatnot, getting clear on like what is making customers buy that product? What are they missing? And really thinking more about like, how do we get new customers based on new features, or how do we make sure the customers we have today are using the product and getting value from it so they're not churning. And really thinking and framing it that way, because then you can make sure that you're both building new things or refining the things you already have that are going to make the people that you have currently happy and stay. And then how do you build new things that could potentially draw in new customers or new pools of people that maybe you haven't been able to target yet.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Thank you so much. This is a great workshop. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for asking a question. All right. I don't know who is next. I'm guessing y'all might be in chronological order. Europe, I might have said your name wrong. Correct me if I'm.
Hey, yes, you're doing it right. Sorry, there we go. I had a question about, you mentioned how it might be, in some cases, be careful of using this tree too early in the process. And I had a follow-up question about that. Like if, for example, you're working and you're still trying to figure out the monetization strategy for your product. Is it too early? Is it still okay to use this sort of framework? Because I feel like your monetization strategy will affect like KPI, will affect your overall product strategy, right? Because it will you will push for engagement if it's ads, or maybe you don't care about engagement, and there will be other KPIs if it's just subscriptions. So yeah, curious to know what you think about when's the right time to kind of bring this on with your product team.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think honestly, like, I do think you can still use it in the beginning. And I guess in the beginning, it's probably more of a discovery tool than it is like a, we've tested these 5 things and we know that these metrics drive this metric, right? And so I think it can be used. You just have to take it with a grain of salt and make sure you're not like over, hitching your cart to that wagon because you don't know enough to know that it is 100% bulletproof. But again, I think like one of the challenges with the 0 to 1 is really thinking about, what is the gap in whatever user behavior we're trying, or whatever market we're trying to plug. And then what unique value do we think we can actually create by building it, that our product will fit in that gap or that hole, right? That's like product market fit. And I think that you still have to get really clear on like, what is our strategy and how are we going to get product market fit? And you still have to measure it to make sure that you're on the right track. So like the framework still sort of loosely works. You just need to make sure that you are able to change it if it doesn't. And again, don't spend too much time on like a bulletproof strategy when you're early stage, because you're ideally going to be like pivoting and shifting as you learn.
Right. So be flexible.
Question?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good one.
Hi, Nickey. I'm Shalini. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Wonderful session. Thank you so much. So many insights that we can take back. The one question I had was, how in this KPI tree, how should we be treating, guardrail metrics? Like I'm specifically working on a fintech product, and leading metrics like revenue versus risk. So how should they be balanced on this KPI tree?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still helpful to like have really high level. So when you say risk, you said you're working on a payments platform? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, risk is important, right? Because that's going to cut in directly into your revenue and your bottom line. I personally have never built payments products, but I've had to work with them at Etsy and basically everywhere I worked. And risk and fraud and trust and safety and all of those things really matter because they deeply cut into your bottom line. And so I think that honestly, it might not be the high level part of your tree, but it is one of many inputs that are going to impact and literally directly track up to how much money you're making. And it's going to have its very own unique set of sub inputs that you're going to want to do to stop fraud. And so I think part of that comes into like, how big of a problem is it at any given moment and how much investment does it need? And you have to kind of like think about it from like a portfolio product standpoint, right? Where you're like, all right, we basically like have to invest in risk because we can get in trouble in year 3 or in 2 years from now if we've done nothing here. And so I think like contextualizing that way makes sense. And it depends on, just making sure you're getting the right resourcing to be able to work on it whenever you think it's relevant. But I still think it fits on that tree, honestly. And I think it can have its own very unique, like, especially if you've worked on risk, like what you're doing to mitigate risk is very nuanced and specific and needs its own work streams, honestly.
Got it. So think of it more as an input and essentially build its roadmap with resourcing at a point where you see fit.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think it again comes back to like how urgent of a problem is it? Does it need to be like invested in right away? But it fits on a tree in that like it's going to directly impact like your overall amount of money that you're making or user experience, honestly, if people are like dealing with, having chargebacks or all of the sort of like downstream things of like bad payments, platform risks and fun stuff. I also think we didn't talk about this in the workshop, but this is a thing for us to think about too, is like, obviously you can make one for a full company or you can just make one for your team. If you're on the risk team, you can just have yours, right? It doesn't have to connect up to anything. Like the company has said, this is important and we're going to work on it. And so, that could have its own tree. It's interesting, I think, when you think about how it ladders up into the high level business metrics and why it's important. But, you can have your own tree that is like off on its own island if it's relevant for whatever you're building.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Cool. Maybe one more question. Are we done? All right, cool. Well, Sarah, unless you have any lingering
I
last
did
questions.
just add someone up, but it looks like they might have
Okay.
left by now. So I think that's it.
All right, cool. Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming and watching me do live Miro, which is terrifying. But I appreciate everyone's time today. If you want to find me online, you can find me sign up for my newsletter. I send usually like once a month, although I've been very bad at it lately. I'm not going to lie. Blame my children. Or follow me on TikTok, where I've been just having a really fun time making TikToks. So I hope to see you out there. And thanks, Sarah, for moderating.
Thanks, Nickey. Yeah,
Cool.
this was awesome.
Awesome. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.